Hey everyone, it's me, Stefanie Nici, and welcome to Writer Talk. Today I am here with children's author Joseph Licari. Hey Joe.
Hi, how's it going, Stephanie?
Good, good. How's it going with you today?
Doing very good.
Good.
It's summer. It's a beautiful day. It's great.
Isn't
It's
that
a
the truth?
great
We
time.
finally have nice weather, no rain. We've been getting a lot of rain here on Long Island, so it's nice, it's sunny, it's beautiful. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me here today. There are some questions. I'm very interested in learning more about your children's books. And one of the questions I want to ask is, how did this all start? What prompted you to become a children's author?
Well, that's a great question, and it was almost a surprise to me, to be honest with you, Stephanie. It really
Wow.
was. I I always had a creative spirit in music and in writing and so forth, but a long time ago, I made a decision to do something completely different from a career point of view. And I worked in the computer industry. I worked in technology. I was a product manager for a number of different companies, uh, Symantec and Microsoft, and ending with Zebra Technologies. And I was approaching retirement. And I've learned from other authors that a lot of people kind of get into that time of your life where you start to think about, what is my purpose, or what else would I like to do, or what things would I need to do in the next few years. Even have to be for the rest of your life. So I was always interested in reading, interested in writing. I had written columns for business magazines,
Oh,
and I thought that was something that I'd want to do. And I've had this novel in me for a while. On those long plane rides crossing the country from New York to Seattle, back and forth every few weeks, you have a lot of time. You can do a little bit of work. You can do some things online. And I found myself grabbing a notebook and just writing. And that's where things started for me. And that's good
oh,
because I ended up becoming a better writer over time because I was constantly writing while I was still working. So,
wow.
long story short, I finally did retire. And this is 3 years ago now. And I had been writing, and I thought that I'd be publishing a nonfiction novel, a nonfiction book, and I also had a fiction novel that I had the concepts for and was beginning. And I literally woke up one day with this idea in my head, kind of. If you know Paul McCartney's story about "Yesterday," the song "Yesterday,"
Tell us the
a lot
story.
of people know that story. Paul McCartney is one of those guys. A lot of creative people have dreams lots of times. So he woke up one morning singing "Scrambled Eggs," and the words were nonsense, but he had the melody for "Yesterday."
Wow.
And he and John Lennon sat down and they turned it into "Yesterday," and that was a tremendous song. So I woke up one morning, and trust me, I know it sounds weird when I say this, but I woke up saying Mia's Mouses, or the Mouses of Maria was initially what I was saying.
Oh,
And I thought to myself, gee, I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what the dream was about. Forget about it. And I couldn't let it go. And I began thinking about it, and I talked to some people about it. I have a daughter who's a second grade teacher in Nashville, and we talked about it a little bit. And she said, Dad, that's very difficult, especially plural nouns are very difficult, especially for children where English is their second language. And so I started looking into it and studying it. And one thing led to another, and I published my first book, Mia's Mouses, which is a
wow.
fun story, but it focuses on plural nouns. Obviously, it shouldn't be mouses, it should be mice. And so things just kind of took off from there.
Wow. So now so this was what, 3 years? How
3 years
long
ago.
ago?
Yeah.
3 years ago. And you had no plans on becoming a children's author. That wasn't that wasn't the plan, right? Like even though you were writing,
Yes.
did you ever say to yourself, "Hey, I'm going to write a children's book"? Or was it that when you woke up, you had that melody in your head or that term, Mia's Mouses?
That was my inspiration. And
That was your
up until that point, I hadn't thought about writing a children's book, to be honest. But I raised three daughters. I was very involved in the schools. I was a soccer
right.
coach. I did a lot with children over the years. And
What's the
And
process though? I'm curious. Like, how does a child like
yeah,
for me, let's say I write women's fiction, but I do not write in order. There's no chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. I don't write in
interesting.
sequence or anything like that. Everything
Oh,
is usually out of order.
you're a
So
pantser.
with
Yeah.
the I am, and with the children's book, like how does that work? Or with this particular book, what was the process of writing a children's book? This particular first book.
That's interesting. I think that a couple of things happened for me. I've because I've been so musically inclined. I'm a guitar and piano instructor, also in my retirement at Guitar Center here in Comac, Long Island.
Shout out to Guitar
So
Center in Colmac.
so I've played music all my life, and I've written songs before, and so I've written poetry, and so I began thinking about this in terms of how do I make it fun, how do I make it interesting to children, but at the same time subliminally teach at the same time, and I knew rhyming was important. Now there
Mm,
are a lot of children's books that don't rhyme, and that's fine. And I may write a children's book that doesn't rhyme someday. There's a lots of reasons to choose to do that or not to do that. But if you do choose to write rhyme as an author, let me tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy for a lot of people. And I've picked up books that rhyme sometimes and read them and said, you cringe every now and then because it's a forced rhyme, or the meter doesn't work out well and you find yourself fumbling over some of the words or rushing them to make it rhyme. So I kind of made that. It wasn't really a hard decision for me because I've written rhyme before in songs and in poetry. That just felt natural to me. And I intuitively knew that children really love to listen to rhymes, and it helps with the learning process. And we can talk more about that in a little while. But I think I just stepped into it. And to be honest with you, you used the word plan. I didn't really have a plan. My whole
mm,
life I've planned. My career I've planned. All right. And for to, I really wanted to be creative, and I didn't worry so much about where it was going. I just wanted to write, and of course I wanted it to be good, and I wanted it to be effective. So I just continued to write, and I'd write verse after verse, and I tossed out a lot of verses, and I kept a lot of verses, and the process really was about thinking about who the characters were, what the story line was going to be. I did think about that ahead of time. I knew that there was a girl named Mia, which was really a conglomerate of my three daughters. And I knew that she wanted to make friends and she loved to dance and she loved music. And I wanted that to come out in the beginning. I wanted it to be a very friendly, very fun book where children could relate to the character.
right.
And she made friends with these characters. So one thing led to another. She made friends with these mice, but she continued to call them mouses. And so that gave me the ability to take and provide an opportunity for her to stop for a second and say, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why that's not correct. And so she ended up figuring out that plural nouns were something different, and especially irregular plural nouns. I'll give you an example. I started studying this and looking into it and did a lot of research, kind of on the sidelines as I was writing
Sure,
this.
because it has to be correct.
It has to be correct. It can be part of the first grade, second grade, even third
Yeah,
grade
this is not the
curriculum.
type of
We
book
want it to
that
be.
can
I want
that can
teachers to
be
be able to utilize.
right.
Absolutely. So if I often ask children, when I do school visits, I ask them. I said, "Okay, if you have one mouse, it's a mouse, right? If you have more than one mouse, and many children of all ages will say mouses, partially because I hold the book up and they see me as mouses, and so they refer to mouses. They think that's correct. Incidentally, I had a teacher once look at my book, and she shook her head. She said, that's not correct." I said, "Read the subtitle." Yes, that's the purpose of this book. So Mia realizes in the story that it's not mouses, it's mice. So I ask children, and then we suggest, no, it's mice, not mouses. So then I said, well, what's the plural of house? because that sounds exactly the same. It's spelled
Mhm.
exactly the same, except for the first letter. And they start saying things like, well, it's houses, right? And that's correct. So why is house houses and the plural of mouse not mouses, right? That's very confusing. Then the kicker is then I ask them, well, what's the plural of moose? And you hear all kinds of things. And as you probably know, the plural of moose is simply moose. So those are irregular plural nouns. Those are words that don't follow any specific rule.
Yeah, that's the
And
English
you
language for you, right? It contradicts
exactly.
itself all the time. Yeah, it's interesting though. It's
But
interesting. And we do hear it wrong anyway. Like we do hear like me as mouses, but yet moose sounds right
right,
for one as singular or plural, but yet me as mouses sounds incorrect. So somehow our ear does pick it up,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That it's
Well,
incorrect. It's
we've
so
been
it's
we've been reading and listening to the language for decades, right?
yeah,
But it's difficult for a 7-year-old or 8-year-old kid that grew up in South America and is now in school trying to learn English,
yes.
and it's a second language, and it really is difficult for them.
I think I even remember though as a child myself, some English speaking students, some American students that were born in the United States, even they had trouble in the beginning. Like if you
Yeah,
think back to even when you were in school as a kid, there were children that did have trouble with that and may have said mouses and other incorrect forms of different words. So
that's
sometimes I
true.
don't even think it matters the country or what the first language is. It's just something that we say. We automatically maybe add that S when
Yes,
we're kids to mouses instead of mice,
that's
right?
true. Yeah, that's
That
true.
really jogs my memory now as a kid. So now I see Mia on the cover. She has brown hair. Now, as you wrote the story, did you picture the characters and the animals and anything else? Did you picture any of that before you had someone do the illustrations for you? Did you have in mind the character?
I did. I had in mind the character, so I knew, but I didn't. I am, I, you know, I have some modest talents, but one of them is not drawing. I mean, that's not my forte. Um, so uh, I really relied on my illustrator to interpret
Mm,
uh, what I had written and come up with some ideas. And we worked together. We went back and forth, and at the first illustration, I think Mia appeared older to me, and I wasn't happy with
oh,
it. I wanted her to appear to be sort of in that age bracket of 6, 7 years old. I didn't want her to look like she was 10 or 11. So,
right, right.
so that was one of the early changes. Um, and the mice characters, he just did a tremendous job. He nailed it from the beginning. I knew I wanted to have some abbreviations on their T-shirts so that you could tell one mouse from the other, and so one of the mouse names is Squeaky, and so that mouse has an SQ on its T-shirt. Another mouse is Speedy, and he wears a T-shirt that says Fast. So as children are reading these books, they may be picking up other subtle uh, signs that help them recognize the characters, but also connect that to the words.
Right, that's so interesting. So now I have a question for you. Hopefully, I'm going to get this out correctly. While you were writing this book, before the illustrations even took place, or before you reached out to an illustrator, while you were writing the book, did the book play out to you as a type of film? Like, did you imagine Mia speaking, or was everything basically just words on paper? Now, the reason why I asked this is
Hmm.
because this is something I just found out like maybe a year ago, because this has to do with readers as well as writers. Some readers, when they read a book, which is another question I'm going to ask you as a reader, some readers, when they read a book, it plays out like a film in
Hmm.
their head. Now, that doesn't happen for me. When I read a book, it doesn't play out like a film. Only specific things come into my mind. And a lot of times the faces are blurry. The
Hmm.
scenery in the background is blurry, and maybe I'm just picking up, processing the character. So when you write, and it's the same thing when I write as well. So when you began writing this children's book, did you have the character in mind then? Like as you wrote, did you like picture Mia and the mice and on the farm and how did that work? I'm so curious because that's very deep, as far as the brain, how the brain works for a writer. Or maybe
Well,
you don't remember. Maybe it's just all a blur too.
no, I've been it's an interesting question. I don't think I see it as a film. For me, it's really more about emotion and feeling.
That's
Uh,
how I feel. Yep, same way.
I can feel the characters. That's what really lights up for me. I feel the characters. I can feel, I, I can sense how they're feeling or the feeling that I want them to have in those moments. They're either happy or
Mm.
they're sad or they're frustrated. In in my second book, where Mia goes to the farm with her mice, these mice when they're happy, I end up creating some things about the characters that they love to do, right? So Squeaky likes to sneeze and tease, and Speedy likes to run really fast, um, and Nibbles likes to munch, as you imagine with a name like
Yeah,
Nibbles.
like I said,
He likes to munch on berries and cheese.
Mhm.
But when Mia gets upset or stressed or is frustrated that she doesn't know something, the mice feel that emotion, and there's a place in the book where each of them stop doing all those things that they really enjoy, because you can see, as a reader, you can see that, gee, they're not feeling very good now either, because they're relating to Mia, who's their good friend,
Wow.
and so
Wow.
they have compassion for that, and they want to help her, and so suddenly they're not running
Oh,
around fast, they're not running, they're not, you know they're not doing the things that they love, because they're suddenly giving all of their attention to Mia and
oh,
want to
that's
help
so
her be
nice.
happy first. Yeah.
That's so nice. So that's added lessons without children even realizing that they're also learning
Yeah.
about caring about other people.
And that's an example of the feeling and the emotion that I think I sense as I'm writing, more than if it's in a film.
Right. So you're more
Visual is
emotional than
right.
than visual. And yeah, me too. That's how I feel. But it's so interesting to ask people
Yeah.
and you just get different answers. But yeah. So now with Mia's Mouses, how long would you say that book took before you said, okay, it's done. Now I'm going to look for an illustrator? Or did you look for an illustrator? Did you start working on that ahead of time?
Uh, I, I, s- I, the process took about a year.
Okay.
About 6 months in, I found an illustrator.
Okay.
Um, so I spent a lot of time working on the verses. I belonged to several critique groups. I worked with an editor. I had some beta readers just read through the verses over and over again, and that really helped. Um, I really wanted to not necessarily finalize, but wanted to make sure that that was quality, and the story was complete and told.
Mm.
Everything was clear before I engaged an illustrator. And then I actually engaged several illustrators, and was able to select the illustrator that I thought was best for the book.
And that's really important. Writers should know that they do not have to stick with one person and they should get samples, right? Samples of the work.
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly what I did. I took a few verses and shared them with each of the illustrators and asked them to come back with a sample drawing. And
That's so interesting
and
because then you get to
Victor
see,
really just aligned with me, and I felt like we could work very well together.
yes.
He
So
was very responsive.
you get to see your work in the eyes of someone else when they send back that illustration.
Hmm.
That must be really something to look forward to
It's exciting.
right?
It really
And then
is.
when you connect with somebody, that's a great feeling.
It is.
Victor, I think you said his name is Victor. So
Yes,
when you got
Victor Nieto is the illustrator that I used for Mia's Mouses, and I continued to use him again for the second book as well.
And then as far as the second book goes, when did you say to yourself, hey, you know what? I'm going to write a second book. When did that come into your mind?
Really, probably within the last 6 months of the process of publishing Me as Mouses, because I realized there was more I wanted to say, and there were more lessons to learn. And the English language can be very complex. So I felt that a solo book would be nice, but I ended up reaching out to teachers and to when I do school visits, I'd ask a teacher, what do you think if Mia was to come back in a second book? What do you think the next challenge should be? And I did polls on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on Instagram to try to get feedback from other writers and other teachers and so forth. And I had a long list. There's a long list of ideas. I narrowed them down to 4 or 5, and homophones really bumped up to the top. And if you don't know what homophones are, not everybody is able to link that word with what they are. They're words that sound the same but mean different things. So, the common ones are to, and to, right? Or there and there. And I started looking into that, and I thought that was really interesting because it also availed itself for humor and interesting lyrics. So in the back of this book, I actually have examples of homophones and also explaining the concept. So there's some nice back material in the book that helps parents as well as teachers have a resource to go to in addition to just reading the story.
Yes. And I think that's great because even adults still have trouble with that, and us writers all the time. Oh my gosh, with the word your, right? We always have, right? There's always an issue. Is it your, or is it possessive? Is it you are? You know what I mean? So a lot of times I see, even on social media, if a writer makes a post and they use the wrong your, oh, they get slammed a little bit. Yeah, people go nuts. Yeah. Oh my God.
The one that I see a lot is then and then. Then, THAN and
Oh, yes, and THAN.
It's
yes.
very difficult for people.
That's another one. Yeah. There are quite a few. The English language, like we said earlier, it's difficult. It's not easy. And even if you are born in the States, and
yes,
it still doesn't always come so easy to everybody. And some people, it's nothing. But just like everything else, some people just have a knack for certain things, language and music, like you play the guitar, right?
Yes, that's right.
And the rhythm, if I'm not mistaken, I think you mentioned it earlier too, has something to do with your stories and the writing, the beats.
It does. So when you're writing in rhyme, if you're reading rhyme, you'll notice it. It's almost like a song. It's music, right? There's a certain number of syllables in each line and a pattern that should be replicated over and over again. Sometimes there could be more syllables in a line than another, and that's okay, depending on where the accents are on those words or the syllables, and it works. I'll read. I thought I'd read to you just the first couple of pages.
Yeah, sure.
Mia's Marvelous Farm Adventure, so you can get a sense for that, right? And this book exposes homophones, and very early on, you start to see where things are going. Mia strolled through the farm with her friends by her side. Squeaky, Speedy, and Nibbles each kept pace with her stride.
Very nice.
Mia skipped to the orchard. The mice scampered there too. They found trees filled with pears, grouped in pairs, 2 by 2.
Oh boy, yeah, it's getting tricky.
So right from the beginning, and I've highlighted the words in the book because this way they jump out a little bit. And so there are many words like that throughout the story. And the girls, she's with her sister in the story, and they get very cute, and they start going through the farm looking for different types of homophones themselves, and they get silly, A deer met a bear, but the bear was all bear, right? They start to get silly with the words because they can be very fun.
Yes, and that makes reading fun, and learning should be fun.
And the thing I found also with rhymes, and if you've read to children, you've read rhyming books, you'll know this. Everybody will know this, right? That those are the books that children want to hear again, again, again. I
Mm,
want to hear it again. All ages, they want to hear it again because the rhyming has an effect of it's like a song, it's like a melody, and they can sense what's coming next, right? Over
right.
time, right? So if they hear that um, that that Mia and her friends, I don't remember the exact phrase, but uh, they were dancing and they were nice. Immediately, the kids are beginning to think. Now they know the story. They know that mice is coming, right?
Yes.
So so that's what makes it very interesting and fun as well. And I wanted a story that children would want to hear again and again and again, especially about things like homophones and plural nouns, because it continues to reinforce those learnings. And
Yes.
speaking of reinforcing, um, one other thing I'll share with you. Right. I found that by going into schools that I wanted to do activities with the children after we read the book or sang a song about the book. So I also came out with a book called Mia's Mouse's Workbook and Coloring Book, which has coloring pages, obviously, but also has some word searches and even even some verses and phrases
Yes.
that allow the learnings to continue. Right?
Yes. It makes the whole thing funner.
The
You know what I
kids,
mean?
the
Funner.
kids love it. And then after I came out with Mia's Mouse's Marvelous Farm Adventure, we published this book, which may appear backwards and on the screen. I
No,
don't
it looks
know.
perfect. Yep, Mia's Farm Adventure word search. I love word
Word
searches.
search, and there's 53 word searches in this book, plus other different puzzles and coloring
Yes.
pages at the end as well.
So
So
it keeps the fun going.
it keeps the fun going and it reinforces the learning and so you've got 4 books that have each of those mice characters, zooming in on each one of them at times, doing different things, and the children can be part of that creative process by coloring and then also by doing some of the puzzles.
So when did you get the idea to create those? Would they be called companion books, or is
Yeah,
that not the correct term?
I think I've used that term. I think that's fair. They can stand on their own independently. I've
Oh,
doing
definitely, for
doing
sure.
book fairs and craft fairs and so forth. It's amazing to me the number of people that, oh, I love word searches, and
Yes,
they're great for
adults need
kids
word
and
search.
adults, kids and adults.
Yes, adults need word search books
Yes,
because it's good for the brain. There's research done on that. So it doesn't matter how small the words are. It could be three
hmm
letters because your brain, right? Your eyes and your brain are concentrating and focusing on finding those words. So it could be cat, dog, house, ice. It could just be 3 or 4 letters, but just to find those words in the search is so important. So I do agree, children and adults benefit from that greatly. So
yeah,
I think those are great books to have. And as far as bringing them to the classroom and reading the stories to the children and then having the activity afterwards, it's really such a great addition. It's so nice to
it
keep it
really
going. So
it
tell
really
me,
is nice.
so tell me what's next on the horizon for you, Joe? What's coming
Uh,
up next?
well, I early in our conversation today, I mentioned that I've had this novel in me for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been working on it seriously, dedicating my time to it over the last year or so,
Oh wow.
um, and so I've had chapters critiqued through a couple of the critique groups I belong to. I attend the Southampton Writers Conference every year, and I've worked with other authors at the conference on different parts of the book, and it's coming together, and I hope to have it out later this year. The name of the book, tentatively, right now, is called Petals to the Point, and
Oh.
that's a young adult novel about a group of 16-year-olds that decide that they're going to ride their bicycles a long distance on their own from Babylon, Long Island, to Montauk Point. So if you know Long Island, it's shaped like a fish. If you live on Long Island, I don't have to tell you that. If other places of the country, you may not realize that, but it's like 130 miles long from, and and these children, they're 16 years old, they're young adults, they decide to ride their bicycles out to Montauk Point, and all kinds of obstacles come up along the way. And it's just a really fun story.
Little
There's
adventure, little adventure ride
adventure.
to
There's
take it, right? Yeah.
first kiss by the fire. There's a rescue in the ocean out east. There's a shark attack. I mean, there's really all kinds of things that go on, but these kids persist with their determination to complete this trip.
Oh,
Uh,
it sounds great.
it's really a fun story. I can't wait to tell it. Can't wait for people to be able to read it. And I'll share one other um, aspect of it that I think is what makes it really meaningful for me. When I was about that age, my friends and I decided to do the exact same thing. And we rode our bikes out to Montauk Point. And this book that I've written is completely fiction, right? Completely different characters and so forth. But I've lived through that. And that, as a writer, that gave me a really strong foundation in terms of the experiences that we had, and the experiences I wanted these kids to have, and the lessons that they learned. It's really a coming of age story for these kids. So it's a lot of fun. And I'll stop there. I don't want to give away too much.
It sounds like a lot of fun. With the little bit that you told, it really sounds like a great adventure. And all of us as children and kids and young adults, even I still ride my bike today through the lake, around the lake with my husband. But we can all relate to being kids and riding bikes and taking adventures and having the first of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
As when growing up. So it really sounds fabulous. And let us know where your other books can be found. The books that you've published, Mia's Mouses.
Yeah, all of the books. Well, Mia's Mouses and Mia's Marvelous Farm Adventure are available through almost any bookstore, through by order. They're available at Barnes and Noble. They're available at a lot of indie bookstores on Long Island and a few other places outside of the New York area. Obviously, it's hard to say indie bookstores and Amazon in the same breath. And I apologize for that.
But it is. It's,
But the books, that's the reality. And the books are available on Amazon. Mia's Mouses is available for free if you have the Kindle subscription, the online version. But both books are available through Amazon. And if you know anything, and a lot of authors will listen to your podcast, Stefanie, I recognize that. My books are available through Ingram. So Ingram is the big book distributor. So the books are available worldwide.
That's great.
I've had people buy books from the UK and Australia quite a bit, and even some other places in Europe. So it's been interesting to see it, that distribution really have an effect of getting the books out there into children's hands. And I recently donated I don't mean to talk about donations, but just in terms of the other parts of the world, through one of our colleagues, I've donated a dozen books to a town and school in Africa. So, for me, it's not so much about book sales. It's sharing these stories with children, with teachers, with schools, with parents, with grandparents who have a good, heartwarming story that they can share with their children or grandchildren.
Definitely. And we have such easy access ourselves in this country to books. And a lot of other countries, or even in this country, some areas, they also do not have access to books. So donating books is very important. And when you can learn from books such as yours, that's also very important too. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Joe. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for writing such wonderful books. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that new YA novel that's going to be coming out, that adventure, that bike ride.
I'll make sure to keep you informed.
That sounds like
I'm very excited about it.
that sounds like a lot of fun too. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. It was a very
Thank you.
interesting chat. I learned a lot about you and a lot about your process, which is very interesting because I'm not a children's book author, and I know there are, you know, other writers that would like to write a children's book. So I'm sure they're going to get something out of this chat that we had today. And for parents to know that your books are available everywhere, and you also will talk in classrooms to
Mhm.
students at schools on Long Island. I think that's fabulous. It's time well spent because you read the story and then they get to do the activity afterwards, and it stays with them. You know, that's something that stays with them.
Yeah, that's I'll just a note on that. You know, you learn as you go, and I think I found what works. So the Me as Mouses program that I've done in libraries and in schools on Long Island. I've also done it in a school in Nashville, two schools down in
Wow.
Nashville. It's it's uh it's great because I'll read a story, and then we'll sing a song about that. Right?
Oh,
So
nice.
we might sing a song about plural nouns, for example. Do we have a minute? I can give you a
Yeah, sure.
little bit on that. So, you know, we talked a little bit about plural nouns. I'm just going to bring this up for a moment so
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. So there are obviously different types of plural nouns, right? So I talk about that with the children, and then we can talk about. I have a verse in the song for each type of plural noun: the regular s, the es sound, the irregular ee, like foot and feet, or rem,
Oh,
child and children. Sheep, like moose, doesn't change when you go from singular to plural. So I get the kids to sing the song. Now the lyrics are original, but the music is not, which is wonderful because the kids all know it from pre-K all the way up to third grade, right? And beyond. If you see a lonely dog, it's a dog. If you see a lonely dog, it's a dog. If you see two or three, they are dogs, don't you see? If you see more than one, they are dogs.
oh, I love it. You had me bop in my head there for a minute too. Oh my God. You're my first musical author, Joe. So thank you. You're my first musical guest.
You're very welcome. And, you know, Stephanie, sometimes parents ask, well, you know, I don't play the guitar and I don't, you know, I'm not musical. How can I help that shared cognitive process for children?
Mm,
And I just wanted to share a couple of ideas. One thing that's easy is that you can clap out the syllables as you're reading the verses of the story, and the kids can clap along too, and that gets them engaged, not just listening, but they're also clapping along, and they'll hear the constant rhythm as they go from one line of the story to the next. Um, you can, if you have a little bit of, it doesn't have to be crazy musical talent. When you finish reading, you could just make up a song like I did. You could just make up a song with some of the words, and sing it together. Um,
yes.
you can pat your leg as you're reading the story, and try to read it in a very rhythmic way. Keep a steady beat as you're reading the story.
Yes. I
Um,
see how much fun you're having with
it
this
really is fun.
and writing these books, which I think is so important, right? Because really we have to love what we do, right? It makes it all the more enjoyable.
It's true.
So, and it's easy to see that if you're loving what you're doing and enjoying it, the kids are going to get that too. The kids are going to get that feeling from you. They're going to see it, and then they're going to participate in it with you. So,
And they
if a teacher or a school wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that? Through your website?
Yeah, so they certainly can go to www.miasmouses.com, and that's my current website, and there's a place there to contact me. They can reach me over email at Joe Six Strings, like a guitar, Joe Six Strings at optonline.net, and certainly through Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. On Instagram, my handle is Joseph Licari, author. So all of those ways, any of those ways,
Okay,
I can be in touch with you.
perfect. Well, thank you again, Joe. Thanks for joining me today. It was definitely a fun chat.
Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it.
And thank everyone for watching. And Joe left all the information. So if you want to reach out to Joe, he's very easy to find on social media. And his books are available in all bookstores and on Amazon. And Mia's Mouse is on Kindle Unlimited, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. Well, thank you again. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you on social media with your wonderful books.
Very good. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, Joe.